So, I wanted to share a couple of distinctions that I have been living in my own life and I have found really useful. I've also shared them with clients who have found it really useful. And so today I wanted to share them with you, especially in this season as the mind is just starting to look towards the new year, to look towards goals. It's like before we're in the fullness of that season, I think this video can be fertile soil. With all my videos, I consider this as if we were here live together. So this isn't a polished, perfected performance. This is really, I think of it like a transmission of what wants to come through and be delivered. That is what I'm doing. And you get to receive it. And, I don't consider myself an expert. I think you are the expert. I think you have profound wisdom inside of you. And I think of this as an offering, an invitation. And you can receive and take in what resonates and what feels aligned, and you can let go of what doesn't. You can be curious about both. So, the main point that I want to speak to in this video are, I would say, the distinction is the game of a goal versus the game of life. So that's going to come in the second part because the first part, I think one of the foundational pieces of that distinction is what I'm going to speak to now, which is achieving versus receiving. And so with this distinction, I'm going to start with achieving because I think that's what most people, when we set goals, that is really usually the place that the goal is coming from. Usually the goal is coming from the mind. And so here's what I mean by that. And actually, while I'm talking about this right now, it could be helpful if you haven't seen, I did a video a few weeks ago called An Exploration of Identity. If you haven't watched that video, it could be fruitful for this video. You don't have to, you'll still get value out of watching this video, but it can help enhance what I'm talking about here. It can take this work deeper. So you can either pause, go watch that one, and I'll put the link actually underneath here, or you can stay, watch this one, and then if you want more, you can go and add that to it. And so the achieving model, how I like to consider, and but by the way, there's no better or worse here. Both of these are wonderful and both of these are valuable. This isn't a game of one is better than the other. That's not where we're going. This is a game of offering information, highlighting how things work, at least in my experience, and then sharing that for your consideration. And so what tends to happen just in our humanness is when we grow up, in our earlier years, we're pretty present, right? If you think about kids, they're really present. They're in their bodies, they're in the moment. But then something happens and it's like our system gets flooded. We get scared. And in that moment, we go into the mind and the intellect activates. And then the intellect, which to me, that's the left brain, the left hemisphere of the brain, it's the interpreter. Its job is to create, like to know you, to create a you so that it can protect you and predict your future to keep you safe. And so that's the way it works. So often what happens, how this looks in our adulthood is that identity has been forming throughout our existence through conditioning and whatnot. And in each of us, this is the other thing I think that's really cool, is each of us, the mechanism of the mind is the same. But our experience, like the focus of the mind, that's actually personal. Here's what I mean by that. For me, my mind tends to get really, you have recycled thoughts. This is what I'm talking about. I guarantee you, if you look back at your life, there's probably been some core areas that just naturally grip you and get your attention. For me, those tend to be my body or my business, right? My body and money. My mind can really get activated and get into protection mode around those two things. Now, for you, it could be something really different. It could be parenting. It could be caring for your elderly parents. It could be, like scholarly, like being smart and getting more credentials, right? So based on our upbringing, it could be advocacy, it could be artistry. There's these flavors of what we're drawn to and what we love that then fuel the mind and give it something to focus on. And so What can happen when it comes to setting a goal, when it comes to setting a goal in the achieving model, that goal is usually created from lack. It's unconscious, right? I think that's really important. It's not like we're intentionally being like, I'm in lack and I'm going to create this so I'm not in lack. Now, sometimes that's accurate. Sometimes we are conscious of that. But a lot of the time, we aren't aware of where this goal is coming from. And so, what can happen is we start to have, let's say, an experience of suffering, an experience of discontent. It could be sadness, it could be disappointment, it could be feeling like a failure. Well, those sensations feel similar to a past time when your system got flooded and the mind came in and said, I'll keep you safe. I'll protect you. I know what to do. And so this is one of the things that I have started talking about recently in my work is this idea, like all minds have habits. All minds have tactics, right? So it's like the mind compares, the mind exaggerates, the mind gets really super narrow and focused. Right? The mind interprets, the mind labels, the mind needs to know. It thinks that if it knows, it can keep you safe. And so if in your current day experience, you're feeling sensations in your system, again, you may not even be conscious of them because we have built a culture that lives from the neck up. We live up here instead of feeling more in the body and being more present with the sensations and the sensory information that's in front of us. And so that's part of what this distinction is going to highlight. But if you're in this experience where your system is flooded and it feels like a threat to your identity, right? If your identity is one that says, I am successful, and now a project didn't go as you planned and you feel like a failure, that is a threat to the successful identity. And so the mind is going to come in to try to soothe you, right? Rather than allowing you to stay in the feelings of, I feel like a failure, that feels overwhelming, right? Some point in time, the system said, you can't handle that. And so the mind innocently comes in and says, hey, you don't have to feel that way. Like I've got you. And then it does what I call the someday effect. That's the habit that it employs, where it puts this vision in front of you. It could be, if it's business related, it could be more money in your bank account. If it's relationship related, it could be like your dream partner, could be your dream home. It could be, a child that's perfectly behaved, right? It could be fitting into jeans that you haven't worn in a couple of years. It puts this vision, it uses imagination and puts this image in your mind and says, when you have that, you won't feel this, right? So go for that thing so that you don't feel this. And again, it's not like this is super conscious, but it tends to be how the mind works. And when you start slowing down to notice the mind, you'll start to see this on your own. And so then what happens is you're seeing that image of that goal, right? There's the goal. If I have that someday, that image of that someday, that is the thing that's going to bring me the peace, the happiness, feeling like a success, feeling good enough. Great. I'm all set for that. Because what the mind is doing in that moment, it's inspiring hope in your system. The image comes in, you're flooded with a state change. Hope brings an emotional change in your state. And then you're like, great, I'm going to start going to achieve that thing. Right. And so this is the achieving model. It's very from the neck up. And the mind says it's usually an avoidance of an experience, right? This is what I mean by it's coming from lack, it's coming from scarcity. It's born from, I don't think I can handle this experience right now. So I'm going to direct outward to this vision. And then one day when you have that, you're going to feel enough. And so it employs the vision of the someday effect. Does that make sense? I hope so. If it doesn't, you can certainly write things in the comments. But here's the thing about the someday effect. The someday effect, it doesn't work. I mean, how many times in your life have you set a goal, achieved the goal, thinking that it would fulfill you? It would bring that like lasting peace and happiness to your heart, but it doesn't. Like suffering is still waiting for you on the other side. Now, there might be a little reprieve, there might be a little period of time where you feel peaceful and happy, but the nature of the mind is that it's focused on future or past because that is how the mind lives. The mind doesn't exist, right? We can't be like, here, hold my ego, right? We can't do that. And so it only lives in our head. And the ways that it does that is by focusing on future and focusing on past, right? We don't want that. So let's go for that. Or remember that? That was so great then. Let's have that again now, right? And so it keeps the achieving game alive. And this is where we're going to start moving into the receiving mode. So the distinction here, it's like as the mind keeps you in the distraction of achieving, and again, it's innocent. It's like the mind isn't the enemy. It's doing its best to take care of us because it doesn't want us to be in pain. But it doesn't know that it, its tactics, the achieving tactic, that is that is how suffering, it's just like we punt suffering down the line. That is how suffering stays alive because we're not meeting the experience that wants to be met. In fact, we're distracting ourselves by going towards that image. And so we're not meeting the feeling like a failure. We're not meeting the discontent. We're not meeting the grief. We're not meeting the sadness, which is fine. Like this isn't if your ego, the ego can co-opt any teaching, right? So if you're, our system knows what we're ready for. Our system knows what we're ready to explore and when we're ready to explore it. And so, right, this is what I mean. Like achieving is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And at some point in time, there will be an opportunity to start to, it's like you'll start to see, and in my experience, it's come from trying to improve myself, right? Trying to improve my body again and again and again and again, never reaching this fulfillment. And it's like it gets tiring. It's like there must be a different way, there must be a better way. And that is when we start to turn inward. That is when we start to more deeply open to the experience that we're wanting to avoid. And so instead of distracting ourselves, when you actually turn toward the discontent, the suffering, the pain, the sadness, the grief, and you allow that to take up space. See, what starts to happen is you demonstrate to your mind and your system that it's okay. You can handle these sensations because that's really all they are. They're sensations in the body, but the mind, it builds up a panic in some ways. But as you start to build greater capacity to meet the sensations, you also start to connect into what I would call the space that is your birthright. The space, like the you that never changes, the you that has been you from the moment you were born. And that is a space of, I'm okay, right? It's like no matter what the sensations are that I'm experiencing right now, there's still this container holding it that's like, that's okay. The analogy that's often used is this idea of the sky, right? The sky, all kinds of weather happens within the sky. The sky doesn't care because the sky is just skying, right? It's just like that can be here. That can be here. It's temporary, right? Oh, there's the big thunderstorm and then the sun comes in, right? Oh, there's the gray clouds and then it opens up, right? It's just the sky is consistent. There is a part of you, I would offer the real you that is consistent, that is always reliable, that is always safe, that always has your back, that is your wisdom. And so it's almost like we have to go through the mind has been running the show through the achieving game, but when we wake up to, wow, this hasn't been super effective, like I've made X amount of dollars and I still feel like I'm not earning enough, or my kid is getting B plus grades and I still feel like I'm failing as a parent, right? There are these outcomes that we make meaning out of. And it's like at some point in time, we start to wake up to what am I avoiding? What feeling doesn't feel safe to feel? And so you go from the mind into the body. Mind, remember, is future past referenced, body is present. Body is now, period. And so, what happens when you drop into the sensations and the feelings that are here, you start to open to the present moment. And it's in the present moment that it's like that's the opportunity to drop into the perfect peace that is your nature. Now, you can't set that up as a goal, right? Because it tends to be, if you set that up as a goal, if I feel my feelings, I'll feel more peaceful. It doesn't always work that way. Depends on how activated your nervous system is, how over threshold and gripped your system is. Because if you're over threshold, it can take time to regulate. The beautiful thing about our systems is that we do regulate. And so I'm going to go back to the board here. So the achieving model is like top down. The receiving model is, I would say, body up, because the mind isn't saying, create this goal so you don't feel this way. In the receiving model, you've dropped into that place of now. You're touching more into the okayness of right now, the beauty of right now, the enoughness of right now. And so then I like to think of it as your heart opens to being this big receiver, right? It's just wide open. Life, how do you want to use me? Right? We're all here as an extension, an expression of consciousness, right? And like life knows what it's doing. And so it will guide us. It will bring us imprints. One of the things that it's doing for me right now is I'm creating a school. It's called the School for Humaning Well. That did not come from my mind. My mind was actually terrified by the idea, but it came through my heart. And so it's this receiving and responding to the information. That is very different from setting a goal to achieve. It's like it comes through you. It's the expression of creation that comes through you. And then thought helps to bring it into form versus thought creating it. It's coming from the place, it's often talked about the place before thought. So that is a distinction here that I think is really important before we start to talk about the next distinction, which is the game of a goal and the game of life. And so as you're considering yourself, your life, your upcoming goals, you can start to play with and just inquire, is this goal a good idea? Is it a should? Is it something my mind says will save me from feeling like a failure? Is it something my mind says will make me more valuable? Is it something my mind says will make me more whole in some way? Will make me a good mom? Will make me a good dad? You just, and again, it's not bad. Like it's all part of the dance of being human and starting to inquire and wake up to those things. That's how we move from this, right? It's like this place is more coming from lack. This place is coming from fullness, from wholeness, fullness. Might I might have misspelled that, but that's okay. Um, and so we get to just be used the way that creation wants us to like wants us to share and shine our gifts. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the game of a goal and the game of life. And so, can you start to see the game of achieving, the game of goal is often to protect identity. And so, and I would also say, even if you set, even if the goal is from this place of receiving, your mind can still take over. Maybe it would be helpful. So let me talk about the game of the goal. So you set the goal, and then you reverse engineer, what are the steps that I need to take? What are the behaviors that I need to take? What are the mindset shifts that I need to take? What are the feelings that make me want to be in action? And you put this in place to bring that goal to life. Well, what can happen is the mind in its, amazingness, because it is so invested in living, because remember, it doesn't live, but it is so invested in you holding that identity, because that is how it keeps you safe. That's what it believes. You are safe in this identity, and when life matches this identity, we're good. When life doesn't match this identity, ooh, we got to be concerned. We got to put some things in place to make sure that we're okay. And so when we go for a goal, what can happen is the mind can start to, instead of being in that wide open place, the mind can start to get narrow. It's almost like, I shared another video recently about pain, and I was talking about, like at one point there was no separation between me and pain. It was like, I am pain. The same thing, the mind can do that to the goal, which is like, I am the goal. And until I have that outcome, I am failing. And so your life can start to get really small. And then as the life gets really small, the focus becomes on, am I making progress? Does it look like I'm making progress? And so you take this brilliant, beautiful tapestry of life, or artistry of life, and then shrink it down into this tiny thing, because it feels like your worth, or our value, our wholeness, our lovability is attached to this thing, to having this thing. When that starts to happen, that you will feel it. Like, this is part of the beauty of the system. Suffering is actually the invitation to turn within. But the mind doesn't want you to do that, because when you start to turn within, you drop in to the body, right? You go through feeling those sensations more often. Well, I shouldn't even say more often than not, but sometimes feeling connected to that place of your wholeness. And in that place, your mind doesn't have the power. It just, you see it for what it is. And so it's stories about how there's something wrong with you, how you're not good enough, how so and so is doing better than you, how you would be better if you weighed this on the scale. It's like, it's so much easier to see those as the stories that they are, because your experience, and here's the thing, I'm using words to point to an experience, but words don't do it justice. Like, this is about your direct experience. But when you're in that place, seeing so clearly, it's just so much easier to not get, like, the mind can still, thoughts can still be there, but you don't get swooped up into them, like in the achieving game. Okay, so let's talk about the game of life. So I'm going to use this. So let me do this first, actually. So the game of the goal, I'm going to write that down. The game of the goal. That's when it starts to get really small, right? Because the mind is leading that game. The mind is in charge of that game, because the mind, again, it's attached to that identity. I know I'm safe when this happens. And so it's all systems are firing for that result. And how that can show up is, maybe you're invited out to dinner with friends, but you didn't get all the things done on your to-do list that day, so you don't go out with friends instead, because you're prioritizing your goal. It's like, you need that to survive. Or other ways that this can show up. So that's like, in the nervous system, that's an activation. That's like a fight response, right? You're doing. Other ways it can show up, it could be like complete shutdown, which is, you could be invited out to an experience that would normally feel good, but because you've been so focused on the game, right? The goal, that image that the mind shared with you, it's like you start to feel unworthy, and then you start to shut down, or it's like all the actions feel overwhelming, and overwhelming in your system causes you to pull away. And so then you feel depressed and you just want to be at home watching TV all night rather than experiencing these other areas of your life. These are examples of what I mean about how the game can cause us to contract, right? That the game of the goal can cause us to really contract and get small. And it's like a scorecard comes in. When I have this, then I get to do that, right? That's another way it can show up. Or I don't get to have these other things because I'm unworthy or because I'm not good enough, right? Until this happens. But the game of life is huge. The game of life is this whole screen. The game of life includes the game of the goal, but it also includes so much more. And so how I would speak to that, I think there's three points that I want to highlight here. How I would speak to that is, I've already talked to the game of the goal can start to feel really contracted and small, right? And there's real suffering that can come with that. The game of life says, well, the first thing I would say about the game of life is this is the foundation of the game of life. Life is intelligence. Consciousness is intelligent, right? An acorn becomes an oak tree. There's an intelligence in that little seed that causes it to be this majestic being. There's right, all the cells in your body. You're not in charge of your breathing. You're not in charge of your digestion. You're not in charge of your heart beating. That is the intelligence that is running through you. You aren't in charge of your hearing, right? Like the sounds that are coming in. You aren't in charge of what you're seeing, right? The images that you're seeing actually here through your eyes, mine different, right? There is an intelligence that's bringing those to life in your system. And so the game of life is, this might sound strange, but it's like the game of life is living us. Life is moving us in everything that we're experiencing. And the illusion is that somehow we're in control of it, which that's part of this achieving model. I can be in control if I have this, right? But really, we're not in control of anything. We're not. We think we know what's happening in our day, and then something comes up. Okay, right? And so and I think that's another distinction that's helpful when it comes to this idea of the game of life. The game of life is now. The game of mind is future and past. The game of life is, there is no such thing as future past. The game of life is right now. This is all there is. This is it. Period. Plain simple. Can you drop into that? Can you feel the aliveness of that? Can you feel the fulfillment of that? And that's on offer for all of us. That's the waking up process, in my opinion, is moving in that direction of surrendering the illusion of control, because we never really had it to begin with, but then living as a receiver, right? Life is intelligence. It knows what it's doing. I can receive and respond and receive and respond and receive and respond. And you can know that that's your true nature because that's what babies do. They're receiving and responding. They're receiving and responding. They don't know what anything is, right? The game of life. So it's that intelligence that moves through us, that guides us, that cares for us. It's present. There is no next month. There is no next year. There is no last week. There is no Tuesday, right? In the game of life, it's now. I love Eckhart Tolle says, if you were in the middle of a forest and you ran into a fox and you said to the fox, "What time is it?" It would be like, "Now." Like, what are you talking about? It's only ever now. And so then the last piece, and I think this is most impactful when it comes to this idea of the game of life holds the game of the goal. The game of life knows your fullness. The game of life knows, how do I want to say it? It's like it knows your stretch mode. It knows your joy mode. It's like it knows these things, and it's inviting you into expanding that so that you can feel safe with any experience that's happening in the moment inside of you. And it's also part of the experience is all the other areas of your life, right? I've already talked about this. We can start to compartmentalize. We can start to be like, this is all I'm doing, the goal, this is it. I don't deserve these other things. No, when you can remember that you're playing this goal within the game of life, that means you can be more free to follow the energy. And some days the energy might guide you towards some very specific actions towards that goal. Sometimes the energy might guide you towards taking a play day. Sometimes it might guide you towards taking a trip, right? There is this beautiful balancing on its own in the system. And when the mind comes in and starts to control the game of the goal, because the identity is attached, that's when suffering comes in. I'm someone who I have had a rigidity pattern in my life. And what I mean by that is, I would say just this week, I on a Wednesday, I was just doing all these errands and I wasn't doing anything for my work. Right. And it's just like the nature of life and what was occurring. I was picking up my car from the service. We had guests coming into town. I needed to go to the grocery store to get some of those things. I needed to cook some things. Right. It's just like life was pulling me in these directions. But in the past, I've had this conditioning that like Monday through Friday is about work. And you only get to do those other errands after you finish your work. And it felt so freeing. Like I just watched my mind on that be like, you got to get back home to get to you got to answer those emails. Those people are waiting on your emails. And it was so great because in the past, I would be like, right. I got to get home. I got to do that, right? There would be this urgency to get to those emails because those people are depending on me. And that's how I get my worth and value as being a good coach, right? There was like so much embedded in that. And instead, I could just watch the thoughts and then they would just go away and then let myself enjoy the energy of life moving me on the Wednesday, saying, here's what you're doing today, and just flowing within that. Another way to think of this is the goal of the game, right? When the mind steps in to take that over, that starts to operate at the speed of thought. And the speed of thought is past future. The speed of thought is um, how quickly can we get that so that we can feel better, right? The speed of thought is like it's not the speed of life. The speed of life, the game of life is really like the speed of life. The speed of life is spacious, not tight. The speed of life is, I mean, I don't think nature hurries very often. I don't think nature's in a hurry. Nature is living, being, open, receiving and responding, right? And so if you find yourself, right, if the goal, like the game of the goal, if you start to feel the irritation or you start to feel, right, that the suffering, if you start to feel hopeless, if you start to feel those things, that's because the mind has come in to take over and contract it, and it's made your life very small. And so going through, right, the answer is like going from the mind into the body, into the experience, dropping into, and you can do it in you can actually do it through inquiry, right? It's like, who am I really? Or what is happening? What am I experiencing right now? What's present right now? What do I notice right now? That will start to, and you can notice your mind. Your mind can be activated. That's fine. But at some point, I think it's helpful to start to go, and what else am I noticing? What am I noticing in my body? Oh, I'm noticing my breath is more shallow. What am I noticing in this room? I'm noticing the light. I'm noticing the colors. What am I hearing, right? You can use your senses. What am I feeling? You can use your feelings. You can use the sensations as a gateway into this experience of okayness. And again, that's not the goal, but that is often the entry point because we experience that through out of the mind and into the present. And so when the goal starts to get tight, the opportunity is to remember the game of life is the big game. The game of the goal is a part of the game of life. It's not your whole life, I think that's the real message that I want to share here is the goal isn't your whole life. Your okayness actually isn't based on whether you have that thing or not. Whew, this was a big, long conversation. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that it just offered some new ways to explore this subject of goals. And, it's funny in my life now, like I am someone who has very I have been an achiever, right? Like that has been a way that my system has found safety. That has been a way that my system has felt enough, right? If I get enough validation, if I get enough, then I'm okay. I'm okay, right? So I was like the type A plus student, doing, going. And I'm living in a really different state right now, which is I don't really think about goals. It's just like I trust that life is living me, and I trust that the next step will reveal itself when it's time for that to happen. And so I'm not holding tight. And I will say, I shouldn't say I'm not holding tight because, like I said, the school that I'm birthing into the world, there are times when that old programming of the achiever comes in and is like, you've got to get more people in the school. You're not doing enough. You need to be doing more. But because I would say I've been in the process of dropping into the body. It's like slowing down to see more of the mind's strategies. I feel it more quickly. I feel the suffering more quickly, and I know that that's the invitation to go within, so that I can go wide. It's almost like narrow to wide in a way, and that it makes. Here's what it does. It makes life not have high stakes. It makes life not have pressure. Like living life without high stakes, without the experience of pressure, knowing that I'm okay. I'm okay no matter how many people are in my school. I'm okay no matter what the scale says. I'm okay no matter how these clothes fit. I'm okay. I'm okay. Right? So that is available. Like that is possible. That's the direction that all of this is pointing towards. Yeah. If you have questions about this, you can put them in the comments. You're also welcome to send me an email. My email address is hello@amberchris.com. Like I said, this is an offering. I hope that you receive it. I hope that it was helpful. And again, I'd love your feedback if you're open to sharing. And I'm just wishing you a beautiful holiday season.